Hello and welcome to Upstock's Cric Index presents Reverse Sweep, where much like we did last week, we'll look at movements of players and teams across the leaderboard, all that's happened, much like in the world of investment, where your investments can go up and down, players can go up and down as well, and we found a very simple way to measure all that. The Upstock's Cric Index looks at various parameters across batting, bowling, and fielding, analyzes all the data, and comes up with a simple, easy to understand score on a scale of 10. In a sense, it tells you how your investments are doing, what kind of confidence you can have in your investment, isn't it? So it's a very simple way of doing things. तो है ना क्रिकेट एनालाइज करने का सिंपल तरीका? तो चलो स्टार्ट करके देखें. There are two matches that I wanted to look at. One, because of the significance of the contest and the result, and that was Bangalore versus Mumbai. Now, traditionally, Bangalore have struggled a little bit against Mumbai, and that's why this game was so important for them, especially in their climb back up. And because of key performances, I look at two key players there. There were others too. Virat Kohli got a half century, but Glenn Maxwell, 56 of 37 balls, was very important for him to play that innings at that stage, and that started Chehal's resurgence as well. In a sense, 4 overs, 3 for 11 against a side like Mumbai is fantastic. The hat-trick to Harsha Patel was something that he'll remember for a very long time. They won by 54 runs, but what was statistically significant about this as well is that that was the first time that bowled Mumbai out. It was the first time in the tournament that they've had home and away, both wins over Mumbai, and that tells you why Bangalore this year are a team to watch. They were good last year too. I think there's something about them this year. So that was the one match that I enjoyed watching. The other game that I was actually working on was Kolkata versus Chennai. And the reason I've picked this is Kolkata were that close to picking up points. And if they'd got those, they would have been sitting pretty on the table. Almost saved that game. It came down to a last ball finish. At various points, you thought they'd done enough until Ravindra Jadeja with an 8-ball 22 just took them home. But it was Kolkata's style that I thought was fantastic. And then Sunil Narayan coming in, almost defending 4 of the last ball. The entire field is in. Deepak Char hits a ball. If the fielder is on the edge of the circle, it's an easy catch, but he's got to come in to cut the single. Oh, it was a wonderful, wonderful match to watch. Right then, time to look at our Upstock's Cric Index spotlight. As you know, we've arrived at the values on the leaderboard and for each individual player by looking at a combination of various parameters, whether it's batting, bowling, or fielding, analyze the data within and arrive at a single rating score. And as you would have realized, much like in your world of investments as well, teams and players go up, they go down. So we'll look at the leaderboard first in the company of Shaun Pollock. I'm delighted that Shaun Pollock has joined us as well. Welcome, Shaun.
Thanks, Harsha. Good to be here.
Now, are there any teams, players that you particularly enjoyed? Let's go through that with the leaderboard, actually. Let's see. We're looking at the bowlers specifically this week because, they've been fantastic. And you look at the big names there. Rashid, Jasprit Bumrah, Mohammad Shami, Kagiso Rabada, Trent Bolt, all fantastic last year. But because their scores are so high, there's been a little dip. But how good has Harsha Patel been? He's just climbing up and up and up.
Harsha Patel, I think he was so brilliant at the start of the tournament. So to have him back on track and performing well means it's going to contribute to the RCB success. Avish Khan for Delhi, I think he's been fantastic as well, to back up the two South Africans. But yeah, I would not too much concerned about the other guys. Everyone else there seems to be trugging along. And as you mentioned, at different times of the tournament, they'll be up and they'll be down. But having thought about it, you think of key players in the context of the tournament, guys who are still looking to qualify, teams that are still looking to qualify. And the fact that I haven't been an all-rounder myself, I always maybe look at them with a bit more of a starry eye than some others. But the two positives I've picked are, first of all, Maxwell and Jadeja. First of all, Maxwell's so key in the middle there. I mean, his way he goes about it in the batting, his positiveness, in the combination with others that they're batting around him, his contribution with the ball, always brilliant in the field. And the other thing that people might not know much about their squad is Chahal in that team, he loves to mix with the overseas players. I can remember at the Mumbai Indians, he was big friends with Andrew Simons, and I'm sure he'll be getting on really well with Maxwell. So even his performances have started to improve, and I think he's vitally important for RCB's success going forward. And I think that could have a little bit to do with Maxwell and his confidence, and maybe something that he's added.
So what Polly said about Maxwell is reflected in those numbers. That rating is pretty good by itself, but look at the growth, and that's the impact he's had this week. Growth up 175.75% for Glenn Maxwell. Someone like a Maxwell is a flamboyant personality, isn't he? He starts to do well, and everyone starts to rise alongside Maxwell. So that's the interesting one. You also pick Jadeja.
Yeah, I think he's vital. I mean, we know how skilled he is, and he is just brilliant with bat ball, particularly in the middle overs there, and his fielding superb. But I think also, once again, the value that maybe doesn't get added to the Upstox Cric Index analysis is the contribution that his performance has been able to make for the side. Because if you have a look at them, two of the batters, Dhoni and Raina, may be struggling, haven't got going as yet. So with him in the middle there performing as well as he has, he often picks up the slack. And that's what you need to do in the team situation. If your others aren't performing well, you need to have someone who's getting the job done for the team, and he's done that. So he's almost giving them more time to get themselves ready, get themselves into good form in order to be really competitive and play their best cricket at the back end of the tournament. So that's why I think he's so important.
Now with Jadeja, because he was already doing very well, that rating is outstanding at 8.82. You look at that growth and say, okay, 34.22. But when you're a Jadeja, you're playing that well. The growth comes on such a large base. That growth is significant too. Sometimes you look at the misses because you have very high expectations from them. But the player I think you've picked is someone that we all love to watch, don't we?
Yeah, Suryakumar Yadav. I mean, he's been disappointing since he's returned. His stocks were up. I mean, he'd been playing brilliantly, wasn't he? And even his experience, he then goes and plays for India, performs really well. He heads over to England, full of confidence, loving the opportunity. But since he's been back, he hasn't been able to fire. And why is it a concern? Once again, it's a concern in the team environment. They've had to mix and match at the top of the order. Rohit Sharma now back from injury. And they haven't really fired at the top as they can. We know Mumbai are so potent at the top there when De Kock and Sharma get going. But I think they just need to be able to lay a platform, because we're starting to see Pollard come into his own again. We're starting to see Hardik Pandya starting to perform. But those guys are the guys, when they walk in after 15 overs, they win games from there on, and not under scoreboard pressure. And I think Ishan Kishan was removed from the team, and Suryakumar does just need to come good in order for Mumbai to get out of the situation they're in. If they're going to get into the playoffs, we know that most teams wouldn't want to meet them in the playoffs because they've got that potential to just thump anyone on their day. So I think from a Mumbai Indian perspective, he's the one who they would love to see his stocks going up.
Right, then time to look at our moment of the week. We normally look at performances, and there were some fantastic performances. Ruturaj is always there, Jadeja is always there, Chennai are moving up there, Hardik Pandya, Pollard coming back in, Pollard getting player of the performance for his bowling. So there's lots of these on-field performances that come to mind, but the one I've picked is one that happened off the field. Now, you saw how difficult it was, both at the toss and in the post-match presentation that I did with Rohit Sharma, for him to explain why Ishan Kishan wasn't playing, because they realize he's a young kid who's been picked for India. It's a big stage for him. He's going through a low. The moment came when in this tournament, an opposition captain, as soon as the game was over, took him aside. Now, once the game is over, you're no longer a teammate or an opponent, but you're looking at a larger picture. And I like the fact that Virat Kohli took Ishan Kishan aside. He realizes there's a potential match winner for him in a big tournament to come. Took him aside, had a chat with him. I'm sure he would have told him reassuring things. I'm sure he would have told him, look, I've been through poor form myself. I've got 45, 50 runs in a series once. 2014 in England, I didn't do well. I'm sure he was talking to him about the fact that quality players will go through these dips, but they will come back very strongly. And I thought that was a very good gesture. First from Rohit Sharma, in the way he addressed it and in the way he spoke to Ishan Kishan as well, but in the way that Virat Kohli took Ishan Kishan aside. It was a nice feeling. I mean, if I was a young kid, I was Ishan Kishan, my captain comes to me at the end of a game, where he's been on the opposition and talks me, I'd feel delighted about that. So to me, that was the moment of the week. Right, on that points table, then, you'll find there's a Q alongside Chennai. You can also put a Q against Delhi and Bangalore. I think they've done enough. It's hardly ever. I mean, you never not qualify with 16 points. I think Bangalore, in the momentum they're in, will get to 16 points. I feel a little sorry down at the bottom of the table for Hyderabad. They've been such a good team for this tournament. A little worried about Rajasthan and Punjab as well. That is why I think it'll come down to a shootout. And this week will make that amply clear, a shootout between Mumbai and Kolkata. And which is why the two games that I'm really looking forward to this week involve those two teams. Can Kolkata stay in on that number 4 slot when they play against Punjab? And that'll be a big game for them. Punjab just staying alive. But it's a big game for them. I think it's an even bigger game for Kolkata. But it's Mumbai versus Delhi. And the reason I say so is Mumbai are behind, if you noticed on that graphic, on net run rate over Kolkata. They've got to win all 3 and hope that Kolkata drop one somewhere. The interesting thing, though, is that Kolkata play teams that are below them on the table. Mumbai play teams that are above them on the table. But against Delhi, can they recapture the form? They won against Delhi so often in last year's tournament, including that fairly one-sided final. But Mumbai just have to beat Delhi if they've got to have a future in this tournament. So what a game that will be. Last year's finalists coming up again. One team flying high, one struggling for survival. See how times change. So that is the game to look forward to. So there you are. That's what we've had on this week's Upstox Cric Index. We'll be back, of course, next week looking at movements with players and teams that go up and down. So thank you very much for watching Upstox Cric Index presents Reverse Sweep. And I hope you're all set for next week's matches too. So start करके देखें.